Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Well, greetings, friends. Welcome to this Monday night, October 19 edition of Nightcast. Okay. Friends, tonight I just got back from an all-day funeral proceeding for Sam Smitherman, his sister Jackie, who was buried today. And we've got the news for you tonight, in spite of that, other than I'm getting on very late tonight. And we had some problems with our equipment. But we're working on it to get those problems out of our equipment. We're having to fight some Trojans and some things like that some of you are used to. We're in a world, friends, where human beings are like little kids. And God in His Word says that foolishness is bound up in the hearts of kids. But God goes on to say the rod of correction will drive it far from Him. And men today, they want to use psychology and say, oh, you can't spank and whip kids. Well, they're ignoring the Bible, and we're seeing the fruits of not spanking the kids. Kids are growing up to be obnoxious, sinful. And it's going to lead to a situation both in the United States and in the UK, and I'm picking on these two major countries because the descendants today of these two countries are the children, the offspring of Joseph, his two sons, Ephraim, the UK, Manasseh, the US today. If you want to know how that applies, there's plenty of information on it on the internet, but we do provide sermons by Mr. Herbert Armstrong on the weekends on the Sabbath.tv channel, in which he explains that. We have booklets available for that. We tell you about those on the weekend on Sabbath.tv. Now, for tonight, let's get with the opening story for tonight. We got the big story, the biggest story we're saving toward the end. And that's the big story out of Israel. And in a way, it seems like a little thing. And yet, it's going to have big impact with the couple of killings that happened over there in the past 48 hours. We'll tell you about that later. You've probably heard about the one. You probably heard about it in a rather biased way against Israel without much emphasis on the fact that one of the Israeli soldiers was killed. We'll cover that story in a moment. Let's get on into tonight's opening story out of China. China's President Xi Jinping is expected to sign a number of business deals this week during a state visit to the United Kingdom. One of these deals could see Chinese companies funding nuclear power stations in Somerset and Suffolk. There are concerns in the UK about the security implications of the agreement. China editor Carrie Gracie reports.
Hinkley Point in Somerset. No other Western country has opened as much of its critical infrastructure to China. Chinese companies will help fund a new nuclear power station here. But in Essex, they hope to design, build and operate one of their own.
I would like the government to produce a comprehensive assessment of the national security implications of allowing Chinese companies to come in and build and operate nuclear power stations in our country.
This Essex coastline may be transformed if a massive deal on nuclear energy gets signed during the state visit by the Chinese president.
For Beijing, replacing this old power station is the prize. The chance to design and build a Chinese nuclear plant here at Bradwell in Essex, the first in a Western country.
For the Chancellor, China is the land of opportunity, with the money to fund our infrastructure. It's a strategic shift in foreign policy.
Let's stick together to grow our economies. Let's stick together to make Britain China's best partner in the West. Let's stick together and create a golden decade for both of our countries.
Security concerns are not new. Chinese companies have been deep in our communications network for years, despite worries about cyber espionage. The government says regulation is tight and that the same would be true for nuclear power. But the devil is in the detail.
I don't think you can say, in black and white terms, this is dangerous or not dangerous. It all depends on the terms of the deal, how the contract is written, how you take steps to ensure that the United Kingdom retains effective control of the operation.
Last month's military parade in Beijing and the message that national security is paramount. But as President Xi prepares to travel to London, a China which wouldn't dream of allowing foreigners to build its own key infrastructure welcomes the chance to build ours. Carrie Gracie, BBC News.
Okay, and friends, I've got a light story for you next. Light in a way, it's one that sure would be nice to see your electric bill lowered with more development on solar power. And this tends to provide some technical know-how and help along that way. Competitors from around the world set out on a grueling race in a solar-powered car, or actually in solar-powered cars, across the Australian outback. They will cover 1,800 miles, that'd be 3,000 kilometers, from Darwin to Adelaide. The competition is designed to promote research on solar-powered cars.
This terrific family car, it's a four-seater, it's energy positive, and we look forward to seeing you in Adelaide. Thanks, Pavan, for bringing your team. Next up is another from Stanford. Thank you for coming to Australia and wish you well.
Okay. All right, now a more serious story for us tonight. Although this was nice, I wouldn't mind having one of those little solar-powered cars, especially even with gasoline prices somewhat reduced now. Every time you fill up, if you do a lot of driving, sure would be nice to not have to put any gas in the car. Our next story relates to the situation in Israel. An Israeli foreign minister spokesman said an incident there that, let me back this up and tell you, that Israeli police are hunting Eritrean's attackers after Beersheba killing. The caption with this opening photograph, friends, reads, an Israeli foreign ministry spokesman said the incident showed how terrible the situation had become. And here's the story. Police in Israel are investigating an attack by bystanders on an Eritrean who died after being mistaken for a gunman and then shot and beaten. Video showed, now I'm reading you this report, and I'm going to insert some commentary in a moment, because this migrant man was not the only man who was killed. Video showed the man identified as Mulu Habtam Zerham, 19 years old, lying in a pool of blood as onlookers threw a set of chairs on him and kicked him. It happened at the time of a deadly attack by an Israeli Arab. The attack by an Israeli Arab at the same place in Beersheba. He, that Arab attacker, was shot dead. Israel has seen a wave of stabbings and shootings by Palestinians this month. 8 Israelis have been killed and dozens wounded in the attacks. More than 40 Palestinians, including several of the attackers, have also been killed in the growing unrest. The upsurge in violence began last month when tensions at a flashpoint holy site in Jerusalem, revered by Jews and Muslims, boiled over amid rumors Israel planned to relax long-standing rules to strengthen Jewish rights at the complex. Israel has repeatedly denied such claims. Fear and pressure is the headline over this next section. Mr. Mulu was shot by a security guard, apparently while he was fought. The bus station was under attack by 2 assailants. Mobile phone footage shows an angry crowd surrounding Mr. Mulu as he's lying injured on the floor under a stool held over him by a member of security. A set of chairs is dumped on his head before he's kicked by at least 2 people. Mr. Mulu was taken to hospital where he died late last night, Sunday night. Israeli police spokeswoman Luba Samri said officers were working to arrest those who, quote, aggressively beat and kicked Mr. Mulu while he lay on the floor and posed no threat, end quote, the Associated Press reported. Mr. Mulu worked at a plant nursery and was in Beersheba to renew his visa, his employer told Israeli's Army radio, AP said. A man who said he took part in the beating told Army radio he didn't realize Mr. Mulu was not an attacker, the Times of Israel newspaper reported. Quote, I saw people coming and crowding around him. I understood from them that this was the terrorist, said the man, identified as Dadu, D-U-D-U. If I had known that this was not the terrorist, I would have protected him like I protect myself, he said. In a moment of fear and pressure, quote, you do things you're not conscious of whatsoever. End quote. Commenting on what happened, Israeli Foreign Minister spokesman Emmanuel Nahshon said, quote, it's terrible. It shows you what a terrible situation we are in. And indeed, that situation is terrible there in Israel. And this incident is rather unfortunate for a number of reasons. Let me pick up with the reports I have. We have several different reports that I'm putting into one here. The assault on Mr. Mulu happened amid pandemonium after an Israeli Arab Bedouin from nearby Hula opened fire and stabbed people at the bus station. So that was the core incident, the incident where an Israeli Arab Bedouin from nearby Hula opened fire and stabbed people in the bus station. That Israeli Arab Bedouin opened fire and stabbed people at the bus station, killing 19-year-old Sergeant Omri Levy. Now that's the initial event, that Israeli Arab Bedouin stabbing and killing 19-year-old Sergeant Omri Levy. The attacker, identified as 21-year-old Mohanad al-Okbi, snatched Sergeant Levy's gun and continued shooting, injuring 10 people before he was shot dead. It was the latest in a wave of attacks on Israelis across the country and in Jerusalem, putting Israel on heightened security alert. Extra troops have been deployed on the streets, and police in Jerusalem have erected a concrete barrier between the Palestinian district of Jabal Mukabber, where 3 attackers have come from, and the neighboring Jewish settlement of East Talpiot, also known as Arman Hanatziv. Now, you can just bet United States Secretary of State John Kerry is going to be involved. John Kerry is expected to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas separately this week to try to find ways to calm the spiraling tension. There's been a spat of stabbings of Israelis and some shootings, several of them fatal, by Palestinians since early October, and one apparent revenge stabbing by an Israeli. The attackers have struck in Jerusalem and across Israel and in the occupied West Bank. Israel, and of course, you know, the news reports are always going to call the West Bank occupied. You know, as far as that goes, the United States is occupied. Israel has, I was going to say, and the UK is occupied. Israel has tightened security, and its security forces have clashed with rioting Palestinians, leading to deaths on the Palestinian side. You know, as far as that goes, there are parts of the Middle East that are occupied by Palestinians, land that was promised to Israel. So, you know, our verbiage. The violence has also spread to the border with Gaza. Now, what's behind the latest unrest? After a period of relative quiet, violence between the two communities has spiraled since clashes erupted at a flashpoint Jerusalem holy site in mid-September, middle of last month. It was fueled by rumors among Palestinians that Israel was attempting to alter a long-standing religious arrangement governing the site. Israel repeatedly dismissed the rumors as incitement. Soon afterward, 2 Israelis were shot dead by Palestinians in the West Bank, and the stabbing attacks began. Both Israel and the Palestinian authorities have accused one another of doing nothing to protect each other's communities. Now, is this a new Palestinian intifada or uprising? There have been 2 organized uprisings by Palestinians against Israeli occupation, as the news is wont to put it, in the 1980s and early 2000s. With peace talks moribund, some observers have questioned whether we are now seeing a third intifada. The stabbing attacks seem to be opportunistic, and although they've been praised by militant groups, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has said Palestinians are not interested in further escalation. All right, and that's all that we have on that for you for the moment, friends, except I do have a map that shows you the West Bank, Jerusalem, in Israel, Gaza over there at the bottom portion, which has been given to the Palestinians, no longer actually technically part of Israel. Beersheba, I guess you could still say it's part of Israel. It's just the rights to administer it have been surrendered. Now, I've got a story for you to close with tonight, friends. Some news regarding migrants who are stranded in certain parts of... oh, yeah. Actually, I can't run that video. I don't have a license on that video. Okay, I'll tell you what. We're just going to put up our Nightcast emblem while I tell you about this. Migrants are stranded as political talks continue. I think maybe I told you about this last night, except here's some details. President Erdogan of Turkey has been holding talks with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel about the migrant crisis. Even if I told you about this last night, it's worth repeating, I think, because this has big potential regarding what's going to happen and shape around with the Middle East. Erdogan has called on Merkel to speed up his country's EU membership. Mrs. Merkel says she will offer her support in return for Turkey's help in preventing refugees from reaching Europe. How's that for a turnaround? She's in trouble politically over having opened up the doors of Germany and having encouraged and promoted migrants by the thousands and thousands coming on into Germany. And migrants heard of it, and their goal became, Germany, Germany, we want to go to Germany. Now, meanwhile, after this situation where Merkel is now wanting Erdogan and Turkey to help keep the migrants from coming into Germany, hundreds of migrants have become stranded on the border between Serbia and Croatia, from where our reports are coming. Now, one more on the migrant crisis. Migrants are trapped in no man's land at that Croatia-Serbia border. An update from today's news says, Croatia reopened its border with Serbia this evening, Monday evening, removing one of the bottlenecks for thousands of stranded migrants. About 3,000 people had been stuck in cold and wet weather in a no man's land between the two countries. The Balkans are struggling to cope with the huge influx of migrants making their journey into Western Europe. And we're looking for further reports from BBC Europe correspondent Damian Grammaticus, and I believe we'll have something on that by tomorrow evening. Friends, that's going to be it, except I should tell you, even though I don't think we have an updated video on it, we don't, nope, okay. Typhoon Kapu in the Philippines has prompted severe flooding there, forcing tens of thousands of people from their homes. Despite weakening, Kapu is expected to continue to dump rain on the country, with more than 1 meter of rainfall forecast in just a few days in Luzon province. And that amount of rain is double London's annual rainfall that Luzon is going to get in just a matter of a couple of days. A couple of days of rainfall. The severity of the flooding has left daily life almost paralyzed, and evacuation centers fear that supplies are already running low. And we'll be following and watching what happens and develops there, friends. All right, that is it for this Monday night. God willing, and the creek don't rise, friends. We will be back again here on Nightcast tomorrow evening, Tuesday night, with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.